So for our first joint keynote, this year we're doing 2 keynotes and we're sharing them between the technology strand and the startup strand. So for our first joint keynote, we have Jascha Franklin-Hodge. As Guy said, he's the Chief Information Officer of Boston, and he leads the city's efforts to enhance online service delivery, empower city employees with effective digital tools, and improve access to technology for all Boston neighborhoods. He's a fellow computer scientist. He studied at MIT. He has been involved in a lot of really interesting and innovative activities. So he co-founded Blue State Digital and ran its Boston technology office. And there he oversaw the platform that powered the digital presence of President Barack Obama's 2008 and 2012 campaigns. He has served as an advisor to Code for America, a non-profit which I suspect most of us in the room are familiar with, doing really good work with young people and in neighborhoods. So it connects technologists with cities to solve civic challenges. He also was director for software development for AOL's digital music division and has consulted for organizations like the Computer Museum, the School of the Museum of Fine Arts, and the Nieman Foundation for Journalism at Harvard University. So today he's going to share some of his experiences with us. So I'd like you to welcome Jascha Franklin-Hodge to the stage.
Good morning. Thank you very much for the kind introduction and for the opportunity to come here to speak today. As said, I'm Jascha Franklin-Hodge. I'm the Chief Information Officer for the City of Boston. And what I'm going to talk about this morning is some examples of the kind of work that we are doing in the public sector inside city government in Boston. But before I get to the examples, I want to talk a little bit about this idea. This is a quote from a participant in last year's Code for America fellowship program. And he spoke about the idea that software embeds values within it. And so as we talk about our work, I want to frame it in the context of some of our values. You know, the technology that we build and the way that we build it reflects who we are and what we believe in. And so to use these values, these ideas as a way to talk about our work, I think gives some important context for why we're doing this and where we think it's going. So to start with, this idea that we build with our customers, you know, whether our customers are internal to city government or outside the constituents that we serve, our goal is to build technology alongside them, not merely build it for them. Traditional IT is very requirements driven, and customers tend to be involved at the beginning to help establish what those requirements are. And then the technologists go off in a basement somewhere and they code and they test and they build, and then they come back and they say, okay, here's your software, and maybe if you're lucky you get some training to go along with that. But what I think we've seen, and especially in a government context, is that there are flaws and there are limitations to that model. So instead, we try to involve our customers in development of our technology at every step along the way. So the first example of this is a system that we built for our fire department called the Building Intelligence System. And what it does is it combines 7 different databases that the city has with information about buildings in Boston. Information such as the age of the building, known hazards, things like asbestos or a transformer or a chemical laboratory, information about building permits. Is there a permit that's been issued to do welding? Are the sprinklers turned off for renovation work? We have information about violations. Has there been a safety hazard discovered at the building? And we've brought all of this information together on a Google map that allows our fire department to very quickly determine, as they are headed to a scene of a fire or a hazardous materials call, what they may be facing when they walk into that building. Now, the way that this was built was not a traditional IT project. The idea actually came from the fire department themselves. In speaking with some of the dispatchers, a member of our team, heard them talk about the challenge of synthesizing information quickly to put it in the hands of people making making decisions on the ground. And so from that, this idea was born of building an interactive map. And we did this by creating a minimum viable product and then sitting with our dispatch team, showing them the tool, getting their feedback, iterating with them at each step of the way. There were, this launched officially about 3 weeks ago, but there were, I think, 9 different versions of this product that were created over the past 10 months. And it allowed us to arrive at something that works in the very challenging context of a fire response, where there's really 3 to 4 minutes from when a call comes in about an incident to when the unit arrives on scene. We had to build a tool that could work in that very short time window to provide this critical information. And so it allows the dispatchers to enter in any address in the city of Boston and immediately see what we know about the surrounding area, and hopefully help them keep firefighters safe and keep members of the public safe. Another example of this is something we've done called City Score. And this is part of our data-driven performance management program. And the idea is to synthesize data about many different city services into a single dashboard that allows us to see whether we are underperforming or overperforming whatever target we've set for ourselves. And this idea of building with your customers, for us, applies even when we're developing tools designed to create accountability. In developing City Score, we worked with each department to understand how they measure and value their own work, rather than simply applying metrics from the top down. If our customers have ownership over their metrics, then City Score becomes not just a tool for external accountability, but also a valuable tool for departments to manage their own work and to improve performance from the inside out. Creating a data-driven government isn't just about making dashboards. It's fundamentally about culture change. And that culture change only happens when the technology is built with the people who will be using it and within the culture that we're hoping to help transform. The second value that we embrace in our work is to not fear failure. This is, we tend to punish, as a society, we tend to punish government failure much more harshly than we reward success. And this can breed a very strong risk aversion inside of government. But the reality is that success is always the byproduct of repeated failure. And ultimately, for us, the goal is to create a culture of experimentation, because the more lessons that you learn, the better the outcomes that you achieve. So an example of this, we're rebuilding the website for the city of Boston. You can see the current version of it, or the first version of our new site at pilot.boston.gov. And we've chosen to build this new website in public. We launched the first pilot in January. We've done a subsequent launch about a month ago, and we'll have multiple iterations over the coming months before replacing the official City of Boston website later this summer. And this idea of building in public, I think, helps us learn. It helps us build a better product for the people that we serve. And we're trying to use this iteration to help us understand a whole variety of issues. Questions of language. How do we talk about things in a way that people understand and that they connect with? Very often we write website content in this kind of legalistic government speak that bureaucrats understand, but humans do not. And we're trying to really make sure, even down to the choices of words that we use. Do we call it trash or garbage? Rubbish would be the word here, I think. But what resonates with our audience? How do we make sure that we're getting it right when it comes to accessibility? We're doing testing with visually impaired people on the new site and getting their feedback and integrating that. We're working with communities, non-English speaking communities in Boston, to understand their priorities for translation. What content do they want to see first? So all of this for us, by involving the public in this experimental process, we get a better product. We get something that embeds the lessons of the mistakes that we make along the way, and we get something that reflects the perspective and the ideas of the people that we are trying to serve. So you can check out the website. We're also blogging about the process of building this website. So if you go to next.boston.gov, we're documenting how we're doing this, what we're learning along the way, and hopefully providing some insights that are valuable for other cities or other organizations that are taking a similar approach. But this culture of experimentation isn't just for technology itself. It's also a way to think about policy. This is an example of a policy test that we ran in the city of Boston. And it involves double parking of vehicles, delivery trucks and drivers illegally blocking the lane of travel. And the question was whether we could, by changing our enforcement strategy for this particular challenge, whether we could improve the flow of traffic and improve safety for cyclists. So to do this experiment, we purchased several bicycles for our traffic enforcement officers, and we put them out on the road to do targeted enforcement in areas where we'd had particular complaints about double parking. And we used data from the application Waze to measure whether or not this had a material impact on the flow of traffic in the particular targeted areas. We were able to use their system for detecting traffic jams, and we're able to analyze the before and after impact of this new enforcement strategy. Normally, making a decision about an enforcement model would take years of planning, much studying, lots and lots of research. But for us, we were able to run a credible experiment in about 6 weeks by leveraging new data sources and by bringing this culture of experimentation. What's that minimum viable product for policy, and how do we put it to the test? In this case, we actually learned that in most of the areas we tested, there was not a significant positive impact. We did find some places where it was helpful, and we've gone on to do similar type experiments with other enforcement strategies, with signal timing. We also learned some things about putting enforcement officers on bicycles in city streets. If we're going to do that, we need very robust tires on the bikes. And we need to give them some training about how to effectively cycle on the city streets. But this idea of iteration, of even when there's failure along the way, experiments that don't work, our goal is to embrace this. We want to make failure quick, cheap, and educational. When we do this, we ultimately allow ourselves to succeed more often. And we create a culture inside government where fear of failure is replaced with a conviction to experiment until we found a better outcome. And that gets to the final value that I want to talk about, which is this idea of focusing on outcomes, not on technology. We live in this time of incredible, rapid technological progress, and sometimes it can really seem like magic. And it can breed this idea that if only we build the right technology or buy the right app, that it's going to solve all of our problems. But I think anybody who works in technology knows that it doesn't actually go that way. Technology offers no silver bullets. There's no perfect solution. And the challenges that we face, especially in government, require solutions that combine technology, new business process, and culture change. Just chasing after the latest shiny technology is often a distraction from that hard work of implementing organizational change. And focusing on technology above all else can cause us to miss the simple things that sometimes stand in the way of progress. So a couple of examples here. This is a photo from the line that you had to wait in if you wanted a permit to park a moving truck in the city of Boston. Now, Boston, I think like Belfast, has a huge student population, and as a result, people tend to all move on the same day. Leases all expire on September 1st. And so there's this huge influx of people every year who need a permit to park a van on the street to move their belongings. Previously, to get one, you had to come into City Hall, you had to wait. This is actually one of 2 lines you had to wait in, one first in our Public Works Department, then in our Transportation Department. And this quote from our Deputy Commissioner of Public Works, his office is right on the other side of this, and he looks at this line every year and he says, this is just bad government. This is not how we should be serving our customers. So we worked with the various departments to bring this whole process online, to make it possible to apply for your permit online and to have it mailed to you so that you never have to come into City Hall. But for us, this was about more than building technology, because there's a lot of business process that sits behind issuing a permit. There's things like payment, there's ensuring that the street can accommodate a van parked on it. There's a check to make sure that there's no conflict, that there isn't construction happening on the street, or that it isn't going to be blocked off for a parade or something else that day. So to bring this process into the digital environment, we had to work very closely not only with our internal customers, but also with the constituents, these people in line, to understand, how do they think about this? When in their planning cycle do they reserve the van? Do they try to get the permit? And how do we build around that? It wasn't just a question for us of whether the technology would work. The question was whether we could actually make life better for people. And that outcome focus led us to do a lot of things that aren't normally part of a technology project. We had to figure out mailing and fulfillment. We had to help the departments handle all of the payment streams that come from this. But the outcome that we saw was tremendous. In the first 6 weeks of having this project live and this tool available, 40% of the permits were applied for and issued online. We saved people, since we started this, we've saved literally thousands of trips into City Hall and hours wasted in lines like this. But I think the most rewarding part about it was when we actually heard from many of our customers. We had people who had been through this process before and now were able to take advantage of an online option, who were tweeting at us, showing photos of the envelope of their permits having been saved this time. That kind of an impact is ultimately what we strive for, and really how we focus on outcomes. I want to lastly just talk about open data, which is something that we've embraced in the city. This is a typical open data portal site. The government, our city government, publishes a bunch of data tables, various things from building permits to salaries to complaints that we've received, and it all just goes up on a website like this. And it's a bunch of tables. They often lack context, they lack metadata, and all of the other things that you might need to actually make this useful to you as a constituent. And so, I think as a result of this approach to open data, this very tech-centric approach, the movement, the idea of open data hasn't fully lived up to the potential that it has. We all publish, but there's very little consumption, and there's been very few high-value products that have come out of this. So we've asked ourselves, how do you take this incredible source of information and actually turn it into useful knowledge for residents, for researchers, for businesses? And so with the help of a grant from the Knight Foundation, we turned to an institution that's been turning information into useful knowledge for centuries, and that is our public library. And we believe that the library can be one of the most important open data portals that we have in the city of Boston. So we're working with librarians to help us develop a catalog for data, one that incorporates the kind of context and metadata and referencing that's so important to making information useful, and that allows it to be related to other knowledge resources that the library has. We're also working with them to develop programs that introduce open data to library patrons through events and reference guides. The traditional open data approach is about technology, but by asking ourselves how to truly make open data useful, we're hoping to produce better outcomes for our customers. And this is ultimately what this is all about. Outcome focus is about rolling up your sleeves, it's about standing with your customers, it's about embracing the mission of the departments and that we work with as our own mission. It's not saying, we built the tech, so our job is done, here you go, but sticking with it until the actual outcome that we're trying to achieve is real. And so lastly, I just want to talk for a brief moment about why all this matters, at least what matters to me. As you heard, I came to government after founding and running a private sector company for 10 years. And I chose government because I believe that government has a big role to play in solving the challenges that we face as a society. But to make positive change, government can't keep doing business as usual. Government does not have a good track record of harnessing technology and the power of technology to fulfill its mission. And so for me, the challenge of helping government live up to its potential in the digital age is what brought me to public service. And I want to share a quote with you from a guy named Mikey Dickerson. Mikey worked at Google as an engineering manager for many years. And when President Obama launched Obamacare, the healthcare initiative that has insured tens of millions of Americans for the very first time, The launch started rather ignominiously with a failed website project. The website that people were to use to register for care, healthcare.gov, launched and immediately broke. People couldn't log in, they couldn't get coverage. It was a disaster. And it was a disaster of a scale that almost derailed this signature policy initiative of the presidency. So Mikey, along with many other engineers, left the private sector, moved to DC to solve this, and to bring the same tools, the same techniques that they applied every day at Google to help solve this challenge with a government website, and to help it actually succeed as a policy program. And I think this idea, this sense of ownership and of responsibility, I hope that it embodies the spirit that all of you bring to your work. Your technology skills are a profoundly powerful force for change. And the technology that you build, the problems that you choose to solve, the way in which you choose to solve them, can help embed your values in the world around you. So whether you put those skills to work, growing a business, improving your city, helping a charity, I hope you embrace the opportunity that you have to make your world as good as it can be. So with that, I'll conclude. Thank you very much.